So our goal now is to take our cubes, and the further they get away from the center of the world, the smaller they get. So we can see the outer ones are very small and the inner ones are bigger. So how do we actually do that? Well, we're going to use positional data, and we're going to use that positional data to get a mask. You can see here we're using black and white values, and at the center it's very bright, and on the edges it's going to be very dark. This is what I'm going to be referring to as a distance-based selection. So just like we select things in edit mode with the selection tool, we can use distance-based calculations in the geometry nodes to do different selections within geometry nodes. Now, in our geometry node techniques, we've got to know distributions, we've gotten to know instancing, and now we're going to begin working on integrating selections. And there are two main types of working with selections within geometry nodes. We have socket selections, which basically means on a node, they're going to have a little socket here called selection. We're going to be working with that in a bit. And the second one, which is what we're going to be working with now, is a distance-based selection. And how this works is basically however far away a point is from a specific value that we tell it, it's going to give us a mask, and that mask can be used to drive all sorts of fun things. Specifically in this example, the darker the mask get, the smaller the cubes get around the animation. And we need two nodes to get this to work, a position and a vector math with a distance calculation. And our very first step is to set up our distance selection. So to start, let's go ahead and delete the viewer node just so we don't run into any buggy issues. I'm going to hit X, then Control Shift, select set position. And now what I'm going to do is drop in a position field. So Shift S, position, and then drop that down. Now I'm going to Control Shift, click on that to view that in the 3D view. Now, what is position? What are we doing here? Well, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the spreadsheet over here. And under our point cloud, we're going to have some data. I'm going to select points, and then you can see, okay, we have some data that we're working here. Specifically, we have a position attribute. The viewer attribute is basically what we're plugging into the viewer currently. So that value is going to be this value right here. So viewer value, viewer value. Now, this position value, we're pulling into the node editor right here. So we're not making this, Blender already has this data, right? So this is what we refer to as an attribute, but we're going to be using the attribute as a field because it has a diamond shaped socket, and we're going to use that to manipulate the object. So, okay, how do we actually do the distance? Well, next up, we're going to do a vector math. So grabbing the vector math node, plugging that in, then all we have to do is set the math calculation from add over to distance. And immediately we're going to start to see something happening. We got disconnected here, so we're going to have to Control Shift click on the distance node again. And we can sort of start to see something happening here. It's a little bit hard to tell, but at this point you can see the inner ones are kind of darker and the outer ones are brighter. So what this is doing here is it's taking the distance from this vector 0, 0, 0. That's the location value that is calculating the distance from the position of these points. Now, 0, 0, 0 is located right here in the center of the world. Okay, so how do we gain more control over this? Well, one, we can just insert a color ramp node. So Shift S, color ramp, and then plug that in. And then we can go ahead and swap these to invert these. So now we have white in the center and then black in the outside. Now, again, just to have you a reminder here, if you're not seeing this, just go ahead and delete the viewer node, Control Shift click again, and then Control Shift click again. You'll be seeing me doing that a lot as we go forward. Okay, so now we have more control over this because we're seeing that, but how do we actually get it to scale outwards? Well, from here it's 0, and then as it calculates, this is in real world unit measurement. So one value is actually closer to right here, and what we want to do is expand this out. So what we need to do is have the world be smaller. So all we have to do is drop in another math node, plug this in between the distance and the color ramp. We'll go ahead and set that to multiply, and then all we have to do is multiply this up or down, and it's going to scale that distance data. I'm going to leave off with a value of 0.5 here. Great, now we have our mask set up, so it's getting darker on the outside, brighter in the middle. And that brings us to step number 2, which is set up our scale instances. So right off the bat, I'm going to delete that viewer node and begin integrating this. I'm going to go ahead and move this around, get our instance to points back all the way over to the beginning, plug in the noise into the points. So now we should be able to start to see this again. And then we can go ahead and do another scale instances. Enter auto connect, and then we can take this color value and then plug it into the color or the scale of that. And there we go. And now we see that it's now all connected, and we can go ahead and hit play on our spacebar to start seeing this in action. And we can see it's all set up. And we'll have the full node network in the cheat sheets below, and we'll continue in the next chapter.